Jordan, thank you very, very much. That was a great intro. Everybody's favorite. I don't know if I can take credit for, if I can claim that title. But yeah, I mean, guys, welcome everybody. Again, as Jordan said, this is a panel talking about converting gamers to esports fans and delivering ROI to sponsors. I think this will be quite a great conversation. So look, to kick things off, I think we've already done the introduction thanks to Jordan. I'm going to ask each of you sort of how you've gotten into esports. I think it's always a nice way to start the conversation, and we'll just sort of kick into the hard topics thereafter. So Luca, we'll kick it off with you.
How's it, gents? Ladies and gents, you guys can hear me fine, eh? All good? All good?
Yes, all good, all good.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, so I guess Luca Tacconi, the cliche story, I think all the siblings getting you into gaming, very much a late one in terms of my siblings. So my older brother, 19 years age gap there. Big fan of the PlayStation 1 in the late 90s. So my first sort of experiences in gaming were Metal Gear Solid, Abe's Odyssey, and from there just casually gamed as a massive hobby. And early days of high school, met a group of mates who were already engaging with competitive online gaming, if you want to call it that, in the realm of the old Twilight servers, Dota 2, and the original Augusta League. My first days in esports, actually, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Luzada there, the young man himself, 2006, came to watch him, and a good, geez, he is very young. We're all still young, to be honest, which is a good thing. But back then, 2006, Battlefield 2 was a massive thing. 2142, watched a friend of mine compete at Telkom's event at Rage, Augusta. And from there, I was pretty much sold. Hey, I mean, Barry, his team, the Battlefield 2 squad back then as well, just seeing that sort of engagement at that level was very, very enticing. From that day on forward into Call of Duty, the release of the original Modern Warfare back in the day, still a massive fan. I was introduced into the local leagues from a good friend of mine who was actually playing in Barry's Battlefield teams back then. And yeah, the story, the rest is history. I competed in the Telkom events for Bravado Gaming for a couple of years. Enjoyed some success there as well. Back when winning, as the guy said in the earlier panel, was a keyboard and maybe some cash at the end of the year. We were very lucky. But it was all about glory, you know, and I think seeing that passion is still here today, and the people that are, were playing back then are kind of trying to get things going today is a nice thing to see. And then fortunately got the offer a couple of years ago to manage the local pillar for Redbull South Africa, the gaming pillar, and that's currently where I find myself today. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, look, let's segue straight into the young man himself, Barry. Your start.
I feel you've set me up for failure here, man. I've been set up for failure. You talk about your first console being a PlayStation 1. Mine was an Atari 2600, and when I was, I mean, I came from a single parent. My mom couldn't afford to buy me any kind of consoles or PCs, so I remember going around the flats at our where we lived, and washing cars so that I could buy myself my first Sega console, and eventually just traded up until the point where I got my first PC at, wait for it, 18 years old. So yeah, I mean, from there, it was an absolute roller coaster ride. I started playing in competitions. I actually started out running competitions at another event. I used to run the Battlefield competitions for on the SGS servers and the Sykes servers and that back in the day, and then I went from running the competitions to competing in them, and that's where Lucas started to come and watch us compete. We won I think the Augusta, that one competition for 2142. We went overseas to Taipei. My team also competed in the ESL Nations Cup and officially won the first international event for a South African team. And then through all the experiences with Bravado and being a part of it, as Luca mentioned, we were in the same organization. Had the opportunity to go to a few countries, with that being Taipei, Sweden, France with Luca. I've been to China a few times as well. And then I kind of saw what was happening over there, and I wanted to bring that production element from international esports to South Africa, and then started running tournaments and comps. And here we sit today. I sit as the owner of Mettlestate. Never been called Mr. Barry Luzada, but yeah.
No, that's great, and definitely a rich history, and absolutely one of the OGs. Sid, you're up. Tell us your
Oh
start
wow!
to
I feel like I'm at in a tough spot because it's hard to top those two very amazing stories. Me personally, I started gaming more casually. I mean, as a young kid, my story is very similar to Barry's. My parents weren't even interested in gaming, so I'd had to pop over to a neighbor's house who had the Atari. And then it was the boxing game with the two heads and the nose in the middle. And then graduating from that to my first PC game, which was obviously Prince of Persia. And I got really into it. But over time, I've always been an avid gamer. I would skip school. I would do all kinds of things to go to the arcades just to be able to compete. Because I also felt that playing video games was also a very interesting way of developing a child's mind in terms of your analytics and your problem solving skills. So for me, that also helped my development as an individual. Now, growing up and becoming a musician and an entertainer, playing video games was also a very important part of relaxation because you can't really do a lot of regular stuff. You literally have to find a way to entertain yourself in your space. So I've been I'm more of an Xbox guy, so I've probably owned every single generation of the Xbox that's ever existed. And then
are you going to be going for the new one with the next gen? Are you still going to
pre-order already? Well, now because in Nigeria the PlayStation is definitely the more predominant console. So I own both, and I'm obviously pre-ordering both just so some people complain and say, oh, we can't play you because you're playing on the Xbox. Like, hold on a second, I got the PS as well. So that being said, I've been in entertainment and I've been an avid esports fan. I traveled around the world just to attend a lot of conventions, and then I was at E3 a couple of years ago, and I met Phil Spencer from Xbox, and they were planning to come to Nigeria to do a few things. We met, had a nice, interesting talk. Last year at E3, I was like, you know what, I think it's about time to literally take what I see globally, because for me, it was like looking at esports as this amazing a platform for youth to grow and to be recognized for doing something that they love. And being in entertainment, it was very similar to me, because I remember back in the day when if you said you were making music in Nigeria, it was frowned upon. People were looking at you like you were crazy or unserious. So I see a lot of young kids who are interested in gaming. They spend a lot of time and money investing in themselves in gaming, but they don't have an opportunity to explore and expand this into an actual profession. So I was like, I'll come back to Nigeria and literally try and create an ecosystem for these young kids to be able to develop their talent and be able to earn a living and support themselves and their families through gaming, which is something that they love. So I started Sidizens Esports in 2018. We're 2 years in now. Last year, it's been really great, but Nigeria is a different place when it comes to gaming, and there's a lot of infrastructure, like the last panel was speaking about. There's a lot of infrastructure issues that sort of limits us in what we can do. I'm super excited about what the guys in South Africa are doing. I just wish we could just copy some of that and just paste in Nigeria. But I'm super excited about the future of esports, and lucky to have panels and forums like this to be able to discuss and open up ideas and see how we can move esports forward.
No, that's amazing. And I think I just love that common theme with everybody, about seeing what's happening outside of the borders and overseas and all over the world, and sort of bringing those learnings back here. And I think it's very clear that, there's been a lot of success there from each of you and what you guys are doing now. And I think that really kind of sets us up now to really just chat around sort of esports across Africa. And I think it's always interesting to see the different obstacles and struggles that everybody faces in their own country, because I think there's a lot of similarities, across the continent. But Luca, I'll kick it off with you. I think, the state of esports in Africa right now, and I mean, obviously you can definitely lean into the South African side of it, but in your view, what's the state of esports right now? Are we in a good place? Are we growing? Are we bad? Have we regressed? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say we're growing for sure. I mean, looking at, where we were talking of the stories now that, Barry and I came from 10, 15, 20 years ago, things have definitely changed. I mean, the focus and the understanding of where I think the industry needs to go locally, and talking from the continent's perspective, I think there's been a lot of learnings there over the last 5 to 6 years. Obviously, using the examples and almost trying to emulate what we're seeing overseas directly might not have worked perfectly, but I think we have a very keen understanding of how esports works and the formats and essentially what gamers at that level want to experience, whether it be on the mobile, the console, the PC. I think we've had our learnings over the last 10 years as competitors and as tournament hosts, as opinion leaders in the scene. And there's definitely been that shift over the last couple of years, really trying to engage a broader audience. And that's slowly but surely becoming sort of the how can I say, the focus from a tournament organizer perspective. I'm talking on Barry's behalf here. And then also from a brand perspective, I think we really want to try and engage with as many people as possible. So what is the best way to do that? The previous panel was talking about accessibility and relevancy for specific regions. I think that's a massively important one. It can be brought all the way down to a micro level of, what works in Cape Town might not work in Joburg. KwaZulu-Natal is a very important point for me there. It's been a big struggle, the last 10 years of really trying to see what works in KZN from a player level to a host level to supporting it from a brand perspective. What are the guys playing there? What console are they playing on? Where are they playing? Because they're completely forgotten, but it's a massive part of our demographic, so I think that's a big one. We are growing. The direction is there. As Sid was saying, these panels are becoming possible. When Barry and I were playing, our tournaments were being casted out of TeamSpeak channels. You didn't have the possibility to engage with these massive tournaments happening overseas and learning from the best in the world. So it's naturally gonna assist us, just having these channels, these places to actually see what is happening and at the level that it really can be. And we are definitely going to get there. I think the big one is we need more local champions. We need African champions, but I think the end goal is always to see an African champion becoming a world champion. So, what is it going to be to get us first to having an African championship, if that makes sense, to seeing this world championship scenario for the entire continent. Yeah, that's I think where we are now. Yeah,
and that's a great point. I think when we talk about sort of the fact that Africa often gets left out. And I mean, in the previous panel that I was on, we actually were talking about, I think it was actually Sam that brought it up, where, they'll be like world championships and then like nothing in Africa.
I mean, it was like it was like a little meme a while back. I think Ash actually posted it a while back. It was one of the big, or Ash being Goals, Goliath Gaming. They shared something about, I think it was one of the world leagues were announced and all the regions were picked. And again, just not one blip on Africa. You just pretty much remove us from the world map when it comes to esports. And that's an example I've used, for quite a while. It's how do we really develop ourselves first, where they're kind of forced to engage with us. You just can't leave us out. And I think that's where you need to see it happen. There was a movement in Spain a while back. An organization, they pretty much just did so well that they were included into Riot's, franchise leagues, because they just owned the scene and they understood the scene. What they were doing was very credible. So rather support that than try and create something new of your own. I think that's where we need to find ourselves.
Yeah. Sid, and moving on to you in terms of the state of esports, and especially in your region, I think it's always, and what I'm loving about seeing panels happening, especially this year, is we're doing a lot more focus on Africa and not really just sitting within, the South African border. So it's always fascinating to get a viewpoint from outside. So, what's the state of esports for you in your opinion?
I mean, I'm super excited because right now there are a lot of people who are interested in getting involved in esports. I mean, the just like Lucas said, one of the biggest things is just being able to own our own space and consolidate. For me, it's like it's growing, but there's a lot of fragmentation and not enough people coming together to make a loud enough noise. It's like a little feet tapping as opposed to having a big elephant stomping in a room and get noticed. So like now we have more people getting involved in tournament organizing. We have more players getting involved. There are a lot of little pockets of tournaments popping up now that give people an opportunity to compete. But obviously, for us, there's a lot of infrastructure issues, internet, servers. A lot of players get discouraged because, I mean, most people in South Africa are lucky because at least you have some servers in the region that allow you to compete. But in Western Africa, everywhere else, it's like you either compete with guys in Europe or in the US. We can't even connect to South African servers in Nigeria. It's actually worse to connect to a South African server. So those things sort of discourage players from playing because they feel like they're already playing at a disadvantage. And some people don't even want to compete on that level. There's a huge FIFA community, but they don't play Ultimate Team or pro clubs. They just play kickoff and that's it, you know. And for me, it's like being able to jump over those hurdles to get a situation, because I've spoken to guys from EA, from Riot Games, you know, and they're like, okay, fine, but where are the numbers? We don't see the numbers because we have major connectivity issues, especially in Western Africa. But there are a lot of people that are plowing through my ideas that with the new arrival of 5G and cheaper, faster internet, people would be able to connect more. But that's pretty much it. Right now, there are a few brands who are, especially with the pandemic, it sort of opened some people's eyes to, oh, there's this thing called esports and everybody around the world is doing it. Let's see what's happening in Nigeria and Africa. So I think that's helped us get through the door. But now it's about consolidating and making sure that the ecosystem and the structures are arranged properly so we don't just mess it up as we go along.
Yeah, totally hear you. Barry, I mean, of course, with your experience, and I think what's so great about your perspective as well is you can talk from so many different angles, right? From being a player, you know, being part of an org, to being a tournament organizer and CEO. So, you know, for you, what's the state of esports like? I mean, how are you feeling about it?
I mean, obviously, everybody looks at esports and kind of is super excited about the idea of esports. But more importantly, we kind of need to ensure, like someone like Luca, who's a brand in esports, is going to want to invest all of his money into esports in South Africa. There's definitely a lot of growth in esports. I mean, when we first started our PUBG mobile leagues, I think the first amounts of teams we had was like 30 odd. We're now on almost 160 teams, and that's through the whole of Africa. And obviously, mobile gaming shows that it's a lot more kind of accessible to people in Africa. It's you know, there's obviously that issue around African servers, and everybody keeps going on about servers. The problem is it's not about whether there's servers or not in the country. It's about whether we have enough people that would be able to access those servers, whether they've got power, whether they've got internet, whether they've got the actual equipment to play on them. There's a bigger problem here, but esports as a whole is great. If you look at the past weekend, we ran an event, got huge numbers for South Africa. The production was great. The quality of the CSGO was fantastic. The talent was good. People are starting to get access to have opportunities to broadcast, to cast, to host, to do all kinds of things in esports, which is giving them the practice that they need, not to put us on the same level as international, but to set up our own stage for African esports so that we can start to have people that are good entertainers. And the next step is for us to be able to turn those players and those gamers into heroes. You know, nobody ever goes, who's that guy that played for Man United and then went to Real Madrid? They know it's Cristiano Ronaldo. You know, they know, you know, and if I start to mention names now, there's very few people that are watching and that are here that will know, you know, the history, the rich history that we have in South African esports, specifically in Dota, CSGO, and that's only because those are the older titles, right? But more of an education within the space would make this kind of the scene explode, in a sense that we'd start to make heroes out of gamers. We'd start to make heroes out of the players. And esports is most certainly here to stay. And once we can kind of make it attractive to brands, that's when I think it's really going to happen. But from my perspective, it's kind of like when we're running these events and that there's no doubt that there are gamers out there that want to play. There's no doubt that people want to enter into competitions. We're running a 7 to 13-year-old Fortnite competition, and that just empties, that fills up. I mean, the servers, there's not a space. So there's young kids out there that are wanting to play as well. And you know, it's kind of like we are on the precipice of building this kind of foundation for where it's going to go. We are 10 years behind Europe. We are 10 years behind the rest of the scene. And it's kind of that sliding scale that once you get to the top, it's just going to really take off. And I'm not going to say, most certainly not saying that it's going to explode like the European or the American scene, but it will explode for Africa and how it needs to happen for Africa. We're not going to get hundreds of millions of people watching, but maybe we can get international people watching us. Maybe we can do something good enough for not just Africa, but the world to look at us. And I think it was Luca that pointed out that, you know, we actually need, now I've lost my complete train of thought here, but you know, to have people looking at us and, you know, creating our own kind of niche in the gaming scene is what's, you know.
No, look, and that's a great point. And I think, you know, we look at sort of the West always as the sort of golden standard for what we're trying to achieve. And I think, you know, Luke had mentioned it earlier that we have to find our own way there. You know, and that's where we look at, you know, do we get more involved in mobile gaming? Because, you know, something I've mentioned previously as well, we have such a high mobile penetration rate, you know, on this continent. So it's about kind of finding our own way and a path to success. And Barry, I'm going to bring it back to you. I think, you know, we talk about needing to hit that threshold, right? We need to keep building and working away, but you want to hit that threshold where, you know, we get to that tipping point where it becomes a bit more viable, a bit more feasible, where more brands are getting involved, and not just gaming brands, like non-endemic brands also coming in and getting involved. And one of the things you mentioned was viewership. You know, and I watched the CS tournament over the weekend. And it was so incredible to see. I mean, the level of play, that it was such tight games. The grand finals were incredible. But what I also loved to see was the viewership. I think the average viewership has increased, you know, year on year. I think we're growing. We're still not there, but we're growing. And I think there's a lot of work that goes into that. So I wanted to hear from you, you know, as a tournament organizer, as Mettlestate, how do you go about bringing that viewership in, right? Because obviously that's quite a key component when brands are looking to get involved within esports and gaming and those kind of things. So what's your approach, without giving away too many secrets, but what's your general approach to viewership and really getting the most out of your events?
I think it's the most obvious thing, right? And it's for brands, it's an ROI, and that's obviously what this entire panel is about. What am I going to get in return for giving you all this money, right? What am I going to get? Are people going to buy my phone? Are they going to buy my TV? Are they going to buy my fiber? Whatever it is, what am I going to get in return? Because it's a trade exchange, right? I'm going to give you money. Nowhere have you ever gone in the world where you've just walked in somewhere and said, okay, I'm going to take this, and thank you very much. I'm not going to give you anything in return. I mean, that's a crime. But
I mean, some people do that. Some people do that. But yeah.
The point is, the brand is coming to you and saying, and you're on the panel, Lucas, so I'm going to use the example we used over the weekend. Lucas is going to give me a case of Red Bulls, and I'm going to go, you know, he's going to go, what do I get in return for this? Because if I don't put his Red Bulls on camera, and if I don't give him the exposure that he needs, you know, the next time I go to him and say, can I have a case of Red Bulls? He's going to go, well, Barry, you didn't, you know, I gave you a case of Red Bulls and nobody even knew they were there. So it comes down to the most fundamental thing is what are we going to get back? So when I run a tournament, right, we do, from a Mettlestate perspective, we offer advertising through our social media platforms, through our website. And when I say advertising, that's brand placements. Obviously for the brands, they put their ads up, they put their, you know, whatever graphic that they've got for me. And then when we run a broadcast, they give me video ads. We do some images, some graphics, logo placements, that kind of thing, which historically, when you're pulling in 100 viewers, I mean, if you gave me 50,000 Rand for 100 viewers, how is anybody going to say that's a good ROI? I mean, you could go and pull a crowd of 100 people in the streets if you had 50,000 Rand in your hand, right? So it comes down to not just the tournament organization, but the esports organizations as well. The players that are participating in these tournaments, engaging with the content, tagging, retweeting, liking posts, talking about it. On top of that, it's adding content. So I go back again to Luca, the Red Bull content, where we tried to explain how the bounty system worked, you know, creating little pieces of content. And internationally, again, I don't want us to try and copy them, but they're doing it right. Sam mentioned it earlier this morning. They've managed to monetize esports, and it's through small things like they have camera crews running around the entire event, having interviews with players, getting the insight, and this then will wrap around back to what I said earlier, and it makes people create an emotional connection with players, emotional connection with teams, and an emotional connection, which is what we're missing here, because people don't know who Goliath Gaming is. outside of the scene. People don't know who ATK is. People don't know who Bravado is. They don't know any of these teams and these players. And when you have that emotional connection, it's why we all watch football so much. When the Football World Cup or the Rugby World Cup comes around, there's patriotism, there's emotion, I love this country, I love this team, this is my team. And we haven't created that for esports in South Africa or Africa as a whole. I know some of the African teams from Nigeria, from Kenya, because they play in our PUBG Mobile teams, and there's a lot of passion within that little bubble. But as we sit, we as gamers, we're kind of also selling esports from a passion point. I speak here full of passion about esports, but we sit in a boardroom with brands and we try and sell it from this perspective, and the brands are going, cool, I love your passion, but how are you gonna what am I gonna get for my money? What am I gonna get for my money? And that's where I go back to the players, the teams, the content, the tournaments organizers. Everybody needs to kind of put down their little esports batons and kind of come together and say, how do we make this work together? Because I've been overseas a few times. I've been to international events, and I'll go and sit in a room, I've been fortunate enough to sit in a Twitch lounge at an PGL major event or an ESL major event, and even DreamHack, and you sit there, and every organization, every brand, everybody is sitting in the same room, and they're all having a good time, and they're all talking to one another. And that's what we kind of need to do, is get to a point where everybody is trying to work on the same page. I, as Mettlestate, talk to VS Gaming, make sure that I don't cross over pollinate, ensure that I don't try and take their casters away from them when they've got an event. I don't stream at the same time as them. And that's how everybody needs to talk. I think Nick or Sam also mentioned that I feel like we have like too many TOs and too many people trying to do all the same thing. It's like, let's all work on making esports great.
Look, and Sid, I definitely want to get your viewpoint. Luke, I'm going to save you off for last, because I think you have a very unique perspective as well, being within Red Bull, and I really want to give you some time to chat. And Sid, I think from you were mentioning how you've spoken to, you speak to Riot Games, you speak to EA, trying to get those conversations going to help build scenes here, and they're kind of going, well, we don't really have the numbers and we don't have the infrastructure we're ready to invest in. So what is your approach and what's your current strategy to try to actually get things going and off the ground? Because it's obviously very difficult when we have the kind of obstacles that we do have on this continent.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I literally had to give Barry a round of applause, because he's pretty much hit every talk point that is necessary, especially with the part of having too many TOs. It's like when you and most of the time when I think of esports, coming from an entertainment background, I like to liken esports to the music industry, especially in Nigeria. There was no investment, people thought it was crazy, but then we as individuals made it attractive. As entertainers, we dug in, we did the work, we made it attractive, and now there's heavy investment in entertainment. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, Nigeria actually rebased their GDP based on the revenue coming in from entertainment. So I use that mentality when I think about esports. And Barry said it so clearly. If you don't have, my strategy is to try and create celebrity gamers. If you don't have people that, as Barry used the word, people connect with passionately, there's no emotional connection with the players, you can't build the viewership or the following that you need. It's the same thing with football and sports. You follow Michael Jordan, you follow the late Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Ronaldo, Messi, all these players strike an emotional chord with the viewers, and that's where fans are born from. Now with esports, I was talking to a few people, as a lady from a company called Sidizens Gaming, and she's doing a documentary on esports in Nigeria. And I always say we don't tell our own stories, especially in Africa. We're not good at telling our own stories. There needs to be proper documentation. We need to make it loud enough for people to hear. So the strategy that I'm proposing to a lot of the stakeholders in Nigeria is, first of all, let's come together, let's have a calendar. Let's stop battling with each other for the same space. We can literally come together and have a calendar and say, okay, you do your tournament this period, I'll wait 2 weeks or I'll wait a month, so we don't overlap and players are overwhelmed or the viewers are overwhelmed and we're just stretching the audience as opposed to just letting them go from one match to the next to the next to the next. So we sort of get a train where everyone is following the industry and the games, and then we make our gamers, we tell our gamer story, not just from the skills that they show while they're playing, but also their lives. People can see the growth. They can connect with them on a base level, because it's easy when you see a player tell you that DR.SID is just like me. You know what I'm saying? I remember when I was doing this and now he's doing that. You have this emotional connection. You get involved in what they're trying to do. So obviously for me, that's the first stage. We need to consolidate our tournament organizers and our gamers to have a proper plan where we don't just stretch the industry thin and have 100 people watching when we could have 10,000 people watching one event and moving on to the next event just like that. That's the only way that we really can get brands to see the numbers. Because I can tell you, I know for a fact that there are over 1 million active gamers in Nigeria, but we're just everywhere. So it's literally us coming together and having a system that makes sure that the industry is moving together as one to build an audience that everyone can monetize. Because if we have a large enough audience, even if we get 200,000 people being able to watch an event or take part in an event, every single TO can monetize that number, because that is a solid number that you can push to a brand and say, listen, I can get you 200,000 eyeballs on your brand and your product for this tournament. And this particular gamer won this tournament where 150,000 people watched him become the champion of PUBG Mobile. Do you know what I mean? And these individuals now stand as your reference points. I mean, it's a work in progress, but I believe that we can obviously get there over time. And like I said earlier on, these panels obviously create the avenue for people to see the possibilities, because I have a few people watching right now and they're like, oh yeah, this is what you've been talking about. Hearing it from other people who have experienced it as well and are pushing in the right direction is also giving some people, because I have brands in Nigeria, it's okay, fine, we want to get involved in esports, but we don't know how. And I believe that once we can consolidate ourselves as tournament organizers, as gamers, as teams, and have a plan and a calendar that moves sort of smoothly, where we can all push the audience from one event to the other, so they grow as they move, we can eventually benefit from that growth over time.
100%. I mean, I think that idea of consolidating and trying not to fragment the market is a conversation that happens often, you know, and I think the idea that Barry also mentioned before, you know, TOs talking to each other, trying to sort of make sure that we all know, you know, no one's people aren't stepping on each other's toes, and that's the way to do it, right? It has to be done together, because unfortunately, you know, we have a small market. We're not growing as big as we are right now, you know, as big as the potential we have. So working together is definitely the way forward. And I think even having these conversations, you know, again, across borders, you know, I always talk about this Pan-African movement that can happen within gaming. You know, when you start doing tournaments as a continent and not just within your own country, that's also, you know, a great avenue for growth. But Luca, definitely want to hear from you. I mean, again, you also have quite a great perspective of being, you know, on the, you know, as a pro player, then being in the TO space as well, and now sort of being brand side. I mean, what's your view to that? And on top of that, also just adding on to that, the initial question, how do you, as, you know, Red Bull, approach events and different engagement with different scenes in the esports sector?
Cool. Yeah, I mean, kicking it off on that question specifically, sort of the way I've been trying, at least the last, you know, 2-3 years, engaging with the scene from a different perspective, is really looking at the individuals who are already involved in the scene, you know, community-driven projects that are credible to the audience. They're run by individuals who, you know, have an undying passion for the scene, but in a sense don't have that sort of call it buying power to get themselves to that next level. I think we also sort of look at South Africa, and we look at certain specific brands, and they also carry a larger title on a global scale, but I think the audience must also understand that these brands are dealing with local budgets, you know. So when you look at what you're trying to achieve here, it's far different to, let's say, an event that might have the same logo on it, same event in the US. Is going to be different, you know, differently scaled here. So I think the big one for me, and really like I would say the big one from my personal experience, I guess, almost like the dream experience, is really engaging with unique individuals, athletes, teams, tournament hosts that are really driven by these specialists in that scene, people who have direct passion, for what they're producing, and then from there supporting these occasions and being a part of that story and seeing where it's going to go, as that supporting brand from an earlier level. You want to, I think, be involved more from grassroots than being thrown this massive sort of objective from an individual that just at the end of the day just costs too much, and that you're not going to be able to achieve the ROI expected from, I guess, your pillar head or your manager within the business. So you're not going to approach something like that, at least from my experience, as a specialist who was involved in the scene and understand what's happened in the past. I think, again, going back on that time as well is a massive factor here. It heals, if you want to call it that. I think as we go into the future, individuals like myself, like Barry, like Sid, will start getting involved in these spaces, as specialists within these brands, and would have a bit more knowledge about what is the correct, direction to focus on in the scene. So I think that is a massive sort of requirement as well. Our age group, I think Sid made the point earlier, and Kwesi as well in the earlier discussion about the enormity of our young generation. We have a massive group of teens and young adults who are now breaking into the scene, who are
call them tweens.
There we go. I'd like to consider myself a tween still. No, I'm kidding.
Zoomers. They're called Zoomers now, guys. Keep with the trends.
100%. We dream to still be there. I think we were just a part of the game at 10 years too early. If I could go, rewind now and be a player today, I would definitely do so. But I think it's really this group of individuals that will become, more deeply involved in these spaces. You're seeing sort of that disparity between women and men in gaming as well. When I was 8 years old, girls weren't playing games back then. They weren't engaging with that scene, comfortably, at least, and that's slowly changing now. Taking it a bit personally, my 10, 11-year-old sister is more fluent than me in some of the sort of creative games, your Arks, your Minecrafts, and that's becoming a far more comfortable space for a broader audience. And when this generation starts to, I guess, take over and be involved in a more corporate space, that'll be a natural transition. But really seeing this, as you guys mentioned earlier, this real African push. I think we need to see a continental play, more engagement between each and every country. I think, looking recently, been engaging with the guys in the Ivory Coast. Such a powerful Tekken community there, extremely strong scene there. Some of the guys who have, Dr. Africa, I'm not mistaken, has been to EVO, has placed really well. Guys who can perform on a global scale, but at such minimal sort of, how can I say, steps of opportunity. It's once a year you can attend, a global final. And that's, I guess, something that we've tried to change over the last few years, personally, trying to host these international events that allow the guys to go overseas, engage with that scene, and come back.
Like the League of Legends, the solo queue tournament you guys ran, where the winner now gets to go compete, internationally, which is quite, really, really cool opportunity.
Yeah, and again, like focusing on something like that, it might not be a game that really works, I guess, and that comes through experience that might work for a broader audience in South Africa. But and that, again, that needs to be the focus. I think going back on genre, looking at certain games and genres that really work for South Africa and focusing on that without completely alienating our core audience. The last thing I want to do as a lover of those old school games, your Counter-Strikes, your Call of Duties, your Quakes, that's not nothing you want to forget. I think that aspirational element, seeing our local players competing in these global leagues, which just is impossible purely because of cost barriers at the moment. We want to eventually gauge with that. You don't want to forget about it completely. But really the focus needs to be on games right now that make sense for the local audience. Yeah. Solo queue was an example of, not forgetting the core audience. We have local players are in Challenger Division in League of Legends. These guys are in the top percentiles in the world, playing on ridiculous disadvantages in terms of, their MS, their ping. So those guys you still want to engage with. They're opinion leaders. They have a voice in the space at the absolute core level. So those guys can't be forgotten. But the obvious titles, your FIFAs, your fighting games, in my opinion, I might be coming from a bit of bias because I've really been loving those games the last few years and seeing how much it works locally.
I hate your Jax, by the way. I'm still upset about it. I'm still I hold a grudge against you for destroying me.
Yeah, actually, that started at Nick and them giving me this amazing title back in the year.
I was at that event where you were busy running around crazy doing stuff for Red Bull, and the next thing you just walked up next to me and you had this whole like thing, and I'm like, you're like, yeah, I thought I'd just quickly enter this one competition quickly. I'm like, okay. Massive prize. I'm like,
that's the dream. I think we all wish we could be competing consistently at that level. I would say, Barry, exactly the same as myself. And I think that's a massive, important part of it. I think all of us here love to game. And I think it's these individuals who start to take over, the guys who are beginning to, work out of university with their marketing degrees and will eventually getting involved in these divisions and won't be making the decision on a very, very sort of, call it entry level scale, just on what you think might work, but you actually have a deep investment in the scene and you know what hasn't worked in the past, and you can really assist the company's direction, if you want to call it that. And it's going to become apparent over the next few years. You'll see it happening more often, for sure.
No, 100%. Look, and I mean, yeah, we have 10 minutes, about 10 minutes left. And I think we can talk about this for so much because it's just, again, there's a lot of passion, a lot of experience. I think there's so many conversations still to be had. So I'm also really looking forward to having more of these sort of panels happening, throughout the year, so we can really have these conversations continuously and keep growing and learning from the past and as we move to the future. I think, everybody always loves a soundbite. I think always like everyone has a little bit of controversy within esports. So I'm going to try to bring that here by asking you each one question, and then we'll get to sort of quickly closing thoughts. But in a nutshell, if you had to go, I see Barry's like, oh, okay, let's get ready.
I don't do controversy, man.
So no, look, honestly, really the question is, we talk about this ROI, and there's different ways to cut it up. But if you had to say what's the key metric for ROI, what's the most important metric in ROI? When we talk about viewership, whether we're talking number of teams competing in, what would you say would be the most important? And obviously, they're all important, but hence why I'm going, for you would be the one that you would focus on the most? And Barry, I'll kick it off with you.
Okay. So I suppose, and I'm not really going to give the answer in a way, but for me, it's kind of like, how do I go and stop Luca from spending X amounts of money on a Facebook campaign and rather get him to invest that money in Mettlestate? What am I going to offer him that he can't get somewhere else? And that goes for every brand, right? At the end of the day, it's, what are we offering? We're offering a young, engaging audience. But if that audience doesn't engage, then we're not offering anything more than what a billboard or a radio ad or any kind of paid for advertising can't offer. Yeah. And that's where I'm saying is that everybody that wants to see gaming and esports are two different things, by the way, and that's a whole other conversation. But anybody that wants to see gaming and esports succeed needs to give their 2 cents in. As we know, a like, a heart, a thumbs up, that's currency in the digital world. That's sharing. That retweet is currency. And I need to be able to offer that currency back to the brand to say, here it is in bags. You gave me 50,000. You reached 500,000. And it's easier said than done. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, I want to be able to offer the best. Because I've got the passion for esports, I want to be able to show the brands exactly what it can do for them, and I want to offer them the best that would match their brand image. And that's why when I started Mettlestate, the idea was to make it so that it wasn't a guy sitting on his bedroom or in the bottom of a basement with poor camera lighting, with poor, all of that stuff, and it's to make it look top quality. And it's not just that, it's about offering the same kind of structure to the gamers that play in those competitions.
100%. I think I just really want to highlight that point you've made of how important engagement is, especially when you're in the scene and you want to see it grow. It really doesn't cost a thing in terms of retweets and likes and sharing and really just doing a little bit just to support. And I think that's a really, really, really key point and that I just wanted to bring up. So thank you for that. Sid, what would for you be a key ROI metric?
Barry said it all. That's pretty much what it is. It's literally getting an engaging audience, because it's one thing to give people eyeballs, but if they don't engage, it's pointless. You need to be able to show brands that we can get people to engage with your brand and what you're offering, and that's pretty much what any brand wants. And their job is, if you can get people to engage with us, then we can now do our job to convert that into sales. But if you can't get people to engage, then it's like you're just literally offering them what a billboard offers them at the same time. And and that's really the metric that people, at least here, and I believe here in Nigeria, we need to understand, is that's what we need to be able to offer these brands. Otherwise, it's pointless. And it's pretty much down to also the content that you're putting out. How does that content engage people and make them want to be part of what you're doing?
100%. Yeah. Luca, anything to add on that point?
Yeah, I think the gents covered it pretty well. I think sort of talking it from a brand perspective is really, what are you trying to do to understand the language of the brand? What is their goal for that year? What are their, I guess the term ROI or KPIs for that? What are their goals? What is the brand trying to achieve? Is it selling hardware, hard copies of games? Is it selling a beverage? Is it purely, media outcomes? So understanding that prior to heading in with a sponsorship request or a partnership request is probably the most important thing, and I think having that open channel of communication, which we do have with a lot of the stakeholders locally, helps a lot. Getting that sort of message across from both sides is what am I trying to achieve this year at Red Bull, and what can, let's say, a Barry or a Nick or the guys at UGC running their funding events, what can they do to help me achieve that? But then also along the lines, how can I then help them come back again and try again with something larger and bigger, and be along that story and be along that ride from a core beginning level, building it up and slowly but surely growing the relationship. And it takes time. I think that's the toughest thing. It's really accepting that. Barry, probably with the most experience, I gave up a couple of years ago with the whole TO thing. It's a grind, It really is a tough one. And it takes, passionate individuals to get that done. And we really do have those individuals. But most importantly is also being credible to the audience you're dealing with. I wouldn't want to slap my product onto a broadcast where no one actually there likes it, and be honest about that. If you don't like this beverage or that product or that game or whatever the case may be, then rather don't ask for their support, because you're not going to credibly engage with that product and also create that credible engagement with your audience. With the people that you're speaking to every day, it's going to be forced, and at the end of the day, no one's really going to be achieving that. Everything's going to feel like it's forced. It's a brand exercise, and at the end of the day, I think at the core level, everyone does want to see it succeed. I think especially when there's guys like yourselves involved in the scene at a brand level, you actually want to see the scene succeed and have your brand as a part of that. So for sure, understanding the brands you're working with, language, and then from there being really credible with your audience, and really building that story with the brand, sort of having that long-term goal in mind, rather than just one big bang and it's all over from there.
100%, yeah. Look, and to the viewers. Oh, sorry, no, please.
Sorry, I just want to jump in off the back of what Lucas said. I mean, he's a lot smaller than me, so I just want to get off of his back quickly. The thing is, and I think this is. And I think maybe I missed this as well, being the Business of Gaming Forum. I think what's important from a TO's perspective, from someone that has the gamers on the one side and the brands on the other, I'm the guy in the middle, right? For me, also what's important for a brand is when they get involved is that they actually get involved, right? I've seen it time and time again in the past where a brand has kind of said, okay, cool, here's some money, show me some return on that from gaming. What brands also need to understand is firstly, you don't have to invest millions and millions or hundreds of thousands of rands into gaming and esports. There's a lot that gaming can do for you. It's a super scalable thing. You can go from a 2,000 rand event to a 2 million rand event if you wanted to. But at the end of the day, it's like, get involved. The one thing about, what did you call them? Zoomers. These guys that are moving so fast ahead. They want an authentic engagement. They want an authentic interaction. They want to know that the reason you're there is because you care about what they have to say, or you care about what they're interested in, or you care about what they're doing. You know, it's about saying, okay, cool, we're going to do this and we're going to help do this. We're going to get involved. We're going to get in the trenches and we're going to engage with you. And we're going to see, we're going to commit to this 100% like we would any traditional sports or any traditional activation that we're doing. And then we're going to tweet, we're going to get involved, we're going to interact, because it's a very engaging audience. These guys are very engaging. They want to be able to speak to you. They want to actually, who's doing it really well? The guys from Fall Guys and you know, those brands are really engaging with these guys. KFC have also done it brilliantly. They've got that gaming account and they're engaging. They're having the square offs, I think, against Wendy's and KFC gaming and all of those kinds of things. And that's where it's important, is that as a brand, when you do decide to go into gaming, take some time. You know, you've got someone like me or Luca or somebody that's experienced in gaming. You don't need to know gaming. You don't need to understand what the executions and the rules are around this tournament or competition that you want run. But get involved and put your brand in there in the most authentic and organic way that you can possibly. The end.
No, that's a really, really great point, and I think it's actually a great way to close out the segment. I think, you know, what is key is about, one, again, the community really stepping up and engaging with the content that's there. And it's not about necessarily just engaging with like just your little circle. I think it's about really just engaging with everything. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. And whilst there is obviously competition in terms of, you know, being in the same verticals, I think we're all after the same thing, and that's success and growing the scene. So, you know, one side is definitely having the community stepping up and engaging and engaging things across the borders as well, right? And, you know, that's what we're talking about here. It's around Africa and really pushing that. And then on the other hand, brands that do get involved, you know, it's like, one, get involved. You know, we're not asking for, it's not about putting a ridiculous amount of money in, but when you do put money in, don't just hand it off and go, okay, cool, well, good luck, you better give me what I want. I think, you know, it's about really doing it authentically and with purpose. So yeah, I think, yeah, we close up just in time. Sid, Luca, Barry, I just want to say thank you very much again for taking time to join me here for Business of Gaming, and obviously to Comic-Con Africa for setting this up. I think this is just really great, you know, time to actually have these kind of discussions and these panels. So definitely looking forward to more of those. And yeah, I think that's a wrap, guys. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay tuned. I'm sure there's more incredible panels coming up later.
Thank you, guys. Cheers. Have a good one.
Cheers. Have a good one.